Welcome to another episode of the Collar and Elbow Experience. I am sitting here with WWE legend Bill Anderson. How you doing, Bill?
Doing excellent, my friend. Thank you for having me on.
Yep. I don't know if you knew this or not, but yesterday was the 9-year anniversary of the passing of the late great Macho Man Randy Savage.
Wow, what a legend he was! What a legend! Was fortunate enough to wrestle him twice, only in my career, but I have great memories of being in the ring with him. Once was here in Phoenix, where I live, and the other was in a match in San Diego for both WWF shows. And Randy was the greatest. He was such a skillful athlete and a wrestler, performer, entertainer. He could do it all. He was a good person. He took care of Lanny. He took care of his family at all times. And I just have nothing but great things to say about Randy in all my meetings with him when he married Miss Elizabeth.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I tell you a savage story, a real fast savage story. When I wrestled him in San Diego at the San Diego Sports Arena, I was a bit nervous with Randy because, like I say, he's a heck of an athlete, and he was in better shape than me. I'm in a lot worse shape now. I'm a little heavier than I used to, but I was about 240 when I was wrestling him. Now I'm a little heavier. I got out of the ring with Randy through the curtains in the back, and he called me through the curtains. He was standing there when I got done with the match after he beat me with the big off the top rope. He says, "Hey, I want to talk to you." I says, "Okay." And he says, "I mean now." So I was getting a little concerned because Randy's nobody to fool with, and I'm no fool. And he had a little dressing room with Elizabeth, a little private dressing room. And he says, "Get in here, shut the door." I thought, okay, here my career ends in a little tiny dressing room in San Diego, and they'll never hear from me again. I'll be stuffed down the toilet or something. And Randy pushes the door shut behind me, and I look over. I see Elizabeth over to the side. She's kind of like staring at me, and I'm thinking, what on earth did I do to upset this man that I know bad temper when he wants to have bad temper, and he can handle. And he just sticks out his hand and he goes, "I want to shake your hand." I says, "What?" He says, "I want to shake your hand." He said, "I want to thank you for wrestling me out there and not being so intimidated." And only in Randy's voice, I'm not going to do it because I'll be hoarse for the rest of the night. But he told me, "I just thank you for wrestling with me and enjoying the match, give it a little give and take, and not just letting me beat the hell out of you." And then I looked over at Elizabeth, and she's just cracking up. She's smiling and laughing, and Randy just gripping onto me, handshake, and I just, "Oh my God, thank you, Randy." And he goes, "No, thank you." And it's like, wow. And I'll never forget that because that was one time I thought, what on earth did I do wrong in the ring that somebody's going to be that mad at me? Because I'm usually a pretty annoying guy to get along with in a match. And but it was just a story that stays with me. And I just had such respect for Randy, always tremendous man to be around. I was around him at several WrestleManias out in Los Angeles and when they did different ones and he was involved. Just love the guy. And his brother Lanny is top A1 talent too, and a hell of a nice guy. And a very intelligent guy. That genius gimmick was not just an act.
Oh, I know.
It's a very, very intelligent, perceptive human being. One of the smartest interview guys I've ever seen in my career. Just watched him on some interviews, and he's great. He's great.
Yeah, I talked to Luke yesterday, Bushwhacker Luke, and he was telling me before we went ahead and recorded the episode yesterday, and I asked him about Lanny, and he told me, he said, yeah, he's like, yeah, mate, Lanny ain't he's not doing these no more. He's not doing interviews no more. But I tell you what, mate, I bet you if you go and aggravate the shit out of him, he'll do anything for you.
Well, it would be a great interview if you can get Lanny on your show because he is first class top rate, and
Right.
he's just a hell of a nice guy. Let me tell you a bushwhacker story. I was in the ring a couple of times with Luke and Butch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Actually, in 1989, I remember one match in particular because it was the night before my son was born, and my
Mm-hmm.
son is turning 31 years of age this August. But
Mm-hmm.
the night before my son was born, we were in Fresno, California, doing TV tapings, and
Mm-hmm.
Chief Strongbow walks up to me, and he knew my son was going to be born the next day because Pat Patterson had gotten a call to the building at the Selland Arena and said, "Bill, you need to call your wife. She's at the hospital." So I called it. I'm like 3, 4 hours away from her doing TV for WWF. And I called my wife and she says, "You got probably 6, 8 hours before the baby's coming." She says, "Do your job and then come home." And I said, "Okay, I'll be there. I'll be there for the birth of my son." So
Right.
Chief, he comes up to me, he says, "Let me do you a favor, Billy, tonight. Who do you want to wrestle out of everybody on the TV tonight? I'm going to give you your first choice to work with anybody you want." And I says, "Look, Chief, to be honest with you, I want a nice match where I don't get hurt. I want some good wrestlers, good guys, nice guys that are friends. Give me Butch and Luke. Give me a tag match with the Bushwhackers." He goes, "Billy, I'll do it for you." And sure enough, he put me in the ring like first match with TV tapings with Butch and Luke. And they beat me doing the old headbutt thing, driving the head in. I love working with Butch and Luke because I knew I was in there with two veterans, knew how to
Mm-hmm.
protect their guy and handle themselves well, and they were nice men. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I remember about wrestling Butch and Luke. Love the guys, always pleasure to be around.
Yeah, I've never heard anything bad about them. Like, I mean,
No,
because I've actually had a couple of people ask me if like Luke Williams was my partner for this collar and elbow experience because like I've done now 3 videos with him, and I said no, he has. I said a lot because a lot of people don't know this. He's been wrestling since the '60s.
oh yeah,
He
yeah,
has a very long career. Like, I mean, the man was he was a wrestler. He was a promoter over in Texas. Like,
right. Well, he's kept himself looking good all his career. He stayed in shape. And
uh,
that's a wonderful thing about some of those guys that stayed in shape. And like Brian Blair, there's Lanny too. There's some guys that stay looking good their whole life,
mhm.
And Rick Martel is another one, stays looking real good. I saw Rick Martel a few years ago in Las Vegas. He looks actually looks better than he did when he was wrestling. I mean, he looks tremendous, and I
Right.
really respect those guys. I can't say that about myself. I had some back surgery 15 years ago, and I let myself go. I was very immobile for about 2 years. My lower back. I started putting on weight, sitting more, sitting.
Mhm.
And but I admire the guys like Luke that kept themselves looking good. They can still go out in the ring right now and put on a hell of a show.
Yeah,
And I'll
I'm
tell
all
you a story
licensed to being booked.
yeah, I'll tell you a story with Butch and Luke real fast too. We were doing TV taping for WWF here in Phoenix. Oh, I don't even know, maybe 1990, somewhere around there. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. And my partner, of all things, was Lanny Poffo, and it was me and Lanny against the Bushwhackers. So
Right.
they introduced the Bushwhackers, but they introduced, I'm sorry, Lanny first, and then they introduced me. But I'm a Phoenix boy, so when they said, and from Goodyear, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix, Bill
Mhm.
Anderson, the place just popped. And I got as big, if not bigger, reception than Randy did, and the Bushwhackers was equal to them. And when we got back in the dressing room, forget about the match. The match was routine. I go down, I get pinned. That's okay. When we got back, I'll never forget. I saw Butch and Luke. They were in the showers, and I walked by and I hear, "Hey, mate, come here." And I walk over. And he says, "What was going on in the ring? What was with that big pop up in your introduction?" I said, "Hey, I'm Phoenix, born and raised, man." No, I wasn't born. I was born in Detroit. And I said, "I'm a Phoenix boy." And I says, "You got me on my
Mhm.
home turf, and everybody knows me here." So the crowd really responded when they had an Arizona guy working WWF tapings. And I
Right.
just remember that pop and from Butch and Luke acknowledging it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
I love wrestling Butch and Luke. Great guys. You know, and for that matter, back in the 80s, when I was working a lot of WWF shows, I love working with all those guys. I wrestled Hacksaw Jim Duggan probably 10 times.
mm,
Wrestled Kerry Von Erich when he came in as Texas Tornado.
mhm.
Uh, so many of these guys, Kamala, One Man Gang. Uh, oh my God. I can't even, you go on and name them all. Janetti and Michaels when they were the Rockers, and the Hart Foundation wrestled them several times, wrestled Brett in a couple of singles matches at some house shows. I was filling in for wrestlers that were snowed in somewhere and couldn't make an arena, and I was standby. I'd fill in and work with them. So I had a lot of great opportunities, and the WWE or WWF. I'm so used to calling it WWF. They took care of me on West Coast bookings from Arizona, California, up to Washington, all the way to Colorado. I got a lot of bookings, even in Texas, and even up to Calgary and Edmonton. I got some odd bookings here and there, and I stayed pretty busy as a wrestler. But I was also a ring announcer, and as a ring announcer, uh, I did the West Coast shows from 1988 till about 1993, all the way to Hawaii, to Denver, to Seattle, to Phoenix, and all of California. So I
Mhm.
had opportunities because I made myself versatile. I wasn't so egotistical that I needed to be a wrestler. I earned money for my family, so if that was holding a microphone, a tuxedo on, and standing
Mhm.
there in the ring doing that, I was very comfortable with it.
Right.
And I,
It,
for one,
sounds like you
I
want
could
the
adapt to
business no
that.
matter what.
Exactly. You know, I had to pay the bills for my family. I had a wife and a son,
Mhm.
and that was more important than my ego. Working main events and independent shows or all the other stuff, that was all good and that was fine. But I needed to earn a living. And if WWF didn't need me as a wrestler, I would work as a referee or a ring announcer, whatever they needed me on. And I stayed
Right.
busy from 83 to about 95, 1995, from 1983, when Vince first expanded to the West Coast.
Mhm.
Big expansion. I was right on top of it in 83. Mike LaBelle was the LA promoter for many years in Los Angeles. He sold his rights to promote Vince and let Vince come in, take the territory over. And it was great. And I got in on the wrestling with that and got to work with Paul Orndorff, Adrian Adonis, and Black Gordman, the Great Goliath, Alexis Smirnoff,
Mhm.
all great workers. And I was in the Battle Royal with Andre the Giant and Pat Patterson and Mr. Fuji. And so my memories are great from that period of time. I had a lot of
I mean, you worked in like probably the greatest era of wrestling.
pardon me?
I said you worked in like the greatest era of pro wrestling, the golden era.
That to me, it was honestly the 80s with the expansion. It just, I got to, I was in the ring with Ted DiBiase and Don Morocco. Oh my God, these are my heroes. I got to wrestle John the Golden Greek Polis in Los Angeles at the Olympic Auditorium on a WWF show in 1984. I was like a kid in a candy store. This is the guy that was my inspiration for wanting to be a wrestler. And here I
Right.
am ring with him on the biggest promotion, with the biggest promotion in the world.
Mhm.
What more could I ask for? It's like starring in a movie with John Wayne. It's
Right.
like, how do you go higher? I mean, I was fine.
Right.
So I achieved a lot of things that I was very comfortable with and happy with through that period of time. And wrestling Jake Roberts many times, Jake the Snake. I had that snake all over me, twisted through my tights and everything else. And that's when I learned if I had a fear of snakes, which I don't, thank God, because I would have known very fast. But and then other opportunities arose during the time with Red Bastien. I'm sure you're familiar with who Red Bastien, one of the legendary performers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Texas Red Bastien.
Mhm.
I helped with the training of Sting and the Ultimate Warrior in 1985 because of Red Bastien. I was going through a divorce before I met my wife with my son. That's in 87 and 89. But in 85, I was going through a divorce. Thanks to the wrestling business, avoid traveling and all this other stuff. It was crazy. You know, it's a wild business.
That's why my second divorce happened, was because of pro wrestling.
Exactly. And I mean, I love the business. I loved it, and I just had to do it, and I continued doing it no matter what happened in my personal life. But in '85, I was going through a divorce, and I moved in with Red Bastien. He was looking for a roommate. I was living in Phoenix. Red was living in Los Angeles, and I called Red. I said, Red, I'm coming back to LA. And he says, brother, you can move in with me. I got room for you. And I says, Red, I'd love it. When I got to his house, his apartment, he said, here's the deal. I'm going to be opening up a wrestling camp and training a bunch of big guys. I got 6 big guys, 6 of them. They're all 240 to 380. That's how they're big men. And he says, I need help. He says, I can't get in the ring because I got artificial hips. It's hard for me I can push with the guys, but I can't fall back and take bumps or destroy my bumps. So, and Red was 55 years old at the time. I was, I think, 29 or 30 at that point. So I was still young and in great ring shape. And I said, Red, I'll do anything I can for you. So I'm the one that got in the ring with the Angel of Death, Dave Sheldon, who's 6'7", about 350 pounds, Strangler Steve DeSalvo, Sting, Steve Borden, Jim Wig, who was became the Ultimate Warrior, and 2 other guys, Mark Miller and Garland Donahoe. All these 6 guys were all bigger than me, size-wise. I'm 6'2", but I'm about 120 pounds. They were all bigger than me. And I got in the ring and worked with these guys for a few months. And then Sting and Warrior went their separate ways. Went to Tennessee for Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler's promotion. And the rest became history. And 2 or 3 years later, for WCW and WWF, they were both world champions for their promotions, which was pretty miraculous in this business to create a couple of world champion guys. I mean, I'm not saying I did it all. They did it themselves. Their hard work. They busted their butts doing the training, and in match in front of a crowd is sometimes you have to do. It's not a matter of in-ring training. It's what you do in a crowd situation is where your real experience comes from. So those guys spent time working for Jerry Jarrett's promotion, wrestling probably 7 days a week down there to get experience in the 80s. This is 85, early 86. And late 85, early 86, and it paid off for them. They got some $25 payoffs, but it eventually led to multi-$1,000 nights, as they found out. And pretty cool thing. And the Ultimate Warrior mentioned me on his Hall of Fame speech. Mentioned me in Bastien just 2 days before he passed away. And that was one of the saddest passings. One of a half dozen that I can think of that just brought me down to tears like a family member, more so than a family member passing. I can count them on one hand or a little bit over the 2 hands, and that is the Ultimate Warrior, Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper, those kind of guys, Red Bastien. Their passings, Eddie Guerrero was another one. I was at his funeral at the gravesite that day in 2005 when he was buried, and I was at his funeral with his brothers. Those kind of, the brotherhood we make in wrestling is long. It's lifelong. And you feel like your father, your brother, or your mother, or your wife, or your son dies when one of them dies.
Right. Yeah. 3 years ago, man, I buried 4 guys that I was on the Indies with in less than in 1 year. Like it was like back to back to back to back, and none of them were drug overdoses. None of them were accidents in the ring. It was just random shit, and it's I know what you. I mean, yeah, it was like like you said, losing a family.
It takes a piece of your heart. And one of my great students that I trained was Louis Spicoli, who worked for WWF as Rad Radford. He worked for ECW, and at the time of his passing in 1998, he was working for WCW. And Louis was one of my great students. I knew him for 10 years, right out of high school. He died when he was 27 years old. And for the 10 years that I knew him, no better friend on this earth that I have ever had. He was so loyal to me. And he died from an overdose of soma and drinking some wine. He never did hard drugs. He wasn't into cocaine or heroin, none of that. But prescription pills can kill you just as easy as any of that stuff. And he didn't think anything of it. He was in a lot of pain from his lower back. Even though at 27, his back was already shot from the business. He worked a bunch of matches with Mark Henry in the WWF, like about 20 or 30 days in a row, doing this his ass bump off the top rope when he gets up, and like Bobby used to do, jump off of the leg drop off the top rope. And Mark, he would roll out of the way and he'd land butt first on the mat. That takes a toll on your spine. Lewis was in a lot of pain the last couple of years of his life, and he started taking these stupid somas to relax his body. And he built tolerance to it. I took soma one time. I took 1 or 2. That's all I needed to get anything. Lewis was taking 20 to 40 a day, like it was nothing, like it was candy, like it was nothing, like it was nothing. He had built up a tolerance, and it killed him. And I think about him every day. He was just such a good kid and a good talent. Love of the business, real love. So, he's one of those other ones I tell you, like about 6 guys that touch my heart. Rodney and Jimmy Snuka and those kind of guys are just, I had such a love for Jimmy Snuka and different people I traveled with, wrestled him many, many times, Snuka. And I just really love the guy. Good spirit about him. I have pictures of him holding my son when he's 2.5 months old. Jimmy was just a lovable man.
Hey, Bill, since you brought Jimmy up, and I know, I mean, I hear what you're saying and how much you love the band and how close y'all were. I'm sure you've seen Dark Side of the Ring, the Jimmy Snuka story. Do you believe Jimmy killed that girl?
I believe some horrible accident happened that night at the hotel room. I believe it was totally mishandled by Jimmy and by others involved, whether it's WWE, when he went back to the TV tapings and finished the night and he told people what happened and what they found out later. I think it was badly mishandled. I think Jimmy should have gone. He was so I'm not trying to defend him, but I think in his heart and his mind, he was trying to keep his spot with WWF and not mess up the TV tapings that night and not do a no-show. The police should have been called when the accident happened in the room. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think he intentionally killed anybody or would have killed anybody. And I think that girl, God bless her, and I hope she rests in peace, but I don't think it was intentional. I think she fell. I know Jimmy says it happened alongside the highway. Others said it happened in the room. Only Jimmy and her knew what really happened there.
Right.
I heard it happened in the room, but I don't know that for a fact because all hearsay. But back in the dressing room at the time in the 80s, when it happened, that was the locker room talk. But it was an accident, but it was mishandled. Jimmy mishandled it. And there's no saying bad. I mean, that anything that he right about that. He mishandled it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I first seen it, I was like, because I'd sit there and I'd think about the guy I watched growing up. Because like I said, I'm 39 years old myself, and so I remember seeing you on those TV tapings and stuff like that, and same thing with Superfly, like and granted, yeah, I'm thinking like what I've seen on television being reality, like Jimmy seemed like such a great person. You know what I mean?
Yes. He was very mild-mannered. He was very quiet for the most part. But again, I wasn't in a relationship with him, and I don't know what
Right.
could set him up in a privacy of a room.
Right.
Maybe after liquor or some drugs might have been consumed. I don't know any of that. I can only tell you I was around Jimmy in dressing rooms where he had drank and was drinking too much. And I went out and wrestled him on the same night, and he never hurt me. He was the nicest guy on earth. And I never heard anybody say a negative word about him in the ring or in the dress. So something happened that night or that day in a hotel room. There's no disputing something happened and this girl lost her life. And for that, there's not enough words you can say about how horrible that is. It's just not the Jimmy I always knew. And I'll tell you I told you I wrestled the Bushwhackers the night my son was born. I drove from Fresno straight back to LA, made it to Redlands, California, where my son was born on August 10th, 1989. That night, August 10th, I was in Long Beach doing I think I was doing the ring announcing on a show at the Long Beach Convention Center. And Jimmy Snuka was there. And he walks up to me, and he's the first one that walks up. He says, "What'd you have, brother?" I said, "I had a son, Jimmy, and he was born like about 6 hours ago." And he goes, "Oh my God." He shakes my hand, gives me a hug, and in his hand, $50 bill. When I pulled my hand out, he says, "Get the little guy something from the Superfly." I was going to say superstar, from the Superfly. That's Jimmy. That's the Jimmy I knew. Is that sweethearted man that was always thinking. He knew I wasn't making the money that he was making on the road, and he knew my wife gave birth to a son, and he give the little guy something from the Superfly, $50 bill. That's the Jimmy I knew, and I know the girl died just 5 years before that, but I never saw that side of Jimmy, that violent side. Never saw it, and I was in the ring with him in Hawaii. For our independent promotion in Hawaii. I wrestled him on AWA tapings in Las Vegas for Vergania in the 80s. Wrestled him for many independent shows in Arizona and in California in the 80s. In the ring a dozen times. Traveled with him in the car. Never saw a violent side to Jim. So I don't know what happened that night in that room. And it's been horrible. And like I say, it was definitely mishandled.
Right.
That kind of stuff shouldn't come up 30 years later.
Yeah,
That's right. Should have been handled then. The family should have handled it then.
Right.
I don't know why. It just seems like there was a lot of the family just didn't want to get involved until all of a sudden it's like right at the end of Jimmy's life. I mean, he was almost near death by the time they brought it up. He was going through a lot of Alzheimer's and that sort of thing. And that took its toll on Jimmy, and you saw the photos, how much he aged the last couple of years of his life. And he was, his hair is all gray and, not like mine right here. And it just, it was horrible. But I'm not making excuses for Jimmy. Like I say, it was mishandled. And it's very, very sad blight on our business that the dark side of the ring had something to use against Jimmy. We are our own worst enemies that allow things to happen, whether it's, Owen Hart's situation was different. I mean, he had no control over that, but whether it's, Gino Hernandez or any of these other ones that we've watched, the Road Warriors, the Clock, he was a good friend of mine. All these are self-induced, a lot of these. And we bring it on ourselves to have the public criticize us.
I like that show, Dark Side of the Ring. And me and you've talked before, so like who my inspiration was getting into the wrestling business was the Dynamite Kid. And I'm just afraid to see what kind of episode they're going to do for him after seeing what they did with Superfly and stuff.
Yeah, it honestly, it'll probably be a rough one. I mean, just like Chris Benoit, there's no disputing the in-ring talent. Dynamite I worked on. I never wrestled Dynamite, but I worked on a lot of cards with him in the '80s when him and Davey Boy were the British Bulldog. And there's no disputing his talent. All those guys from Calgary, all the Hearts and all the guys that worked up.
Yeah, Dynamite and Bret, those were my guys. I mean, I got Bret Hart's logo tattooed in the middle of my chest.
Very good.
My youngest son is named after Bret Hart. So,
very
yeah.
Good. Very good.
Like, that old saying, never meet your heroes because you find out what kind of assholes they are. I can honestly say I never got to meet Dynamite, but I did get to meet Bret, and that doesn't work for me because Bret Hart was the nicest guy you could ever imagine meeting.
Right.
And then when he found out my son was named after him, like he just like opened his arms up, to give him a hug and tell him that he's got the best name there is, the best name there was, and the best name, the whole stick.
Yeah. Bret's a great guy. I was in the ring with him a few times, and I have nothing but good things to say about all the Hart family. His brother Ross Hart's a very good friend of mine. I have been interviewed by his brother Bruce Hart, and I've known Bruce for years. And the whole Hart family, they're great people.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole family. I met Stu and before he passed, and good people, legends.
Did you ever get to meet Teddy Hart? Bret's nephew, Teddy?
No, never ran into Teddy. As he was coming up in the early 2000s and everything, I was kind of phasing down my involvement in wrestling.
I'm sure you've heard all the stories about Teddy Hart.
I've heard quite a few. I heard Jim Cornette tell some stories about Teddy Hart that sometimes aren't too flattering. And I've heard a lot of stories, but I can't say I've seen anything myself or been involved with any of it.
I'll tell you what, if you ever get a chance to watch some of his work on YouTube, you'll be amazed. You'll say, I can see Owen there. Like, he works kind of like Owen, but he takes it a step farther. Like, he will make up moves in his head and then practice them like in the empty ring and then go take them out and do them in a show. And
kind of sounds like Sabu. Sabu is the same way, and I wrestled Sabu in Japan, and the Sheik, his uncle, the Sheik, the original Sheik, not the Iron Sheik. Although I have wrestled the Iron Sheik, but I was in Japan with the Sheik in '91, and Sabu, and boy, Sabu could throw some punches and clip you in the jaw pretty good, and very takes the business very seriously, and I respect that. And but he's a hell of a talent too, Sabu.
It's funny you bring up the Iron Sheik. When I worked the Indies, guys, everybody plays ribs,
Yeah.
I used to call different guys motel rooms when we got to town and pretend I was the Sheik, like the promoters.
Yeah.
And I would imitate the Sheik's voice. I'd call him up and be like, "You mother bitch, you fucking tell me you fucking play Sheiky baby, and then you don't get Sheiky baby no airplane. Fuck you, you fucking pussy bitch." Oh man, and the promoters would get so fucking heated. Then the next morning I'd be like, "Oh yeah, hey." They're like, "Man, Sheik called me. You had the bright idea. Let's book Sheik. And this and now look what he's done. He's calling it, cussing me out. I didn't even know anything about ordering a plane ticket." I'm like,
right,
motherfuckers.
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you a Sheik story. In 1996, I was ring announcing for a promotion called the NWF. They were based out of New Jersey, but they were running shows in California at casinos, like a sold show at various casinos. So they brought in the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. I think even the Bushwhackers at one time. Would bring in different guys, different big names to main event, and then local California wrestlers would fill in the undercard. Well, I'm ring announcing one night, and Iron Sheik gets in the ring, and he was doing that thing where he twirls those clubs,
right.
And he had to count, and I didn't understand if it was 1, 2, or it was 1, too. I didn't understand what he wanted me to do, how he wanted me to count it. I counted him wrong. I can tell you that. And he had been drinking a lot, a lot, a lot. And he started cussing at me. And I'm in the ring as the ring announcer. So he grabs the mic from me. He starts calling me every name in the book. I was embarrassed, to say the least. It was like 1,000 people in the crowd. And he's saying, you mother, and blah, 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 blah. I got out of the ring and I went to the promoter. His name was Mike Dano. I went to Mike Dano and I says, Mike, I love working for you, but don't ever book me on another show to ring announce if the Iron Sheik is on the show. I'm done. I don't need it. I don't need this at all in my life. That embarrassment. I put too much years in the business to be ridiculed, bullshitted around in the ring. So I let that ride, and I didn't see Sheik again. For 2009. So it was 15 or 14 years later. We're at Cauliflower Alley Club, and I take Superstar Billy Graham, one of my best friends here in Phoenix. I took Superstar. We drove up to Las Vegas to the Cauliflower Alley Club. So we're sitting at our table, what they call the bologna blowout. It's the night before the awards. They have 3 days going on. And they have a bologna blowout where you get sandwiches and people are talking. It's mingling. Hundreds and hundreds of the boys are all together. You're mingling. And Billy says, hey, brother, he says, Iron Sheik's going to come and sit at our table. And I says, no. He says, we'll go find another table. And Billy says, no, you won't. You sit here. Don't get up. And I said, hey, Billy, this goes beyond my friendship with you. I will not tolerate him. I don't need him in my life. And I said it in 96, and I say it in 2009. I don't need the Iron Sheik. He says, right. Bill, just do me a favor. Sit your ass down. Relax. So, make a long story short, I moved over to another side of the table and left the spot for the Iron Sheik, and so he could talk with Billy. They were good friends, and Billy done a painting. Billy's an artist. Done a really beautiful painting of the Iron Sheik. So the Iron Sheik makes his way over, never looks at me, and he's sitting there, and he turns his back to me, and he's facing Billy, and I'm back here. And I thought, hey, that's fine. So I was talking to other people at the table, and I hear Sheik ask Billy, he says, hey, he says, how did you get here? Who brought you here? He says, Bill Anderson. And Sheik goes, Bill Anderson? And I looked over at him and he goes, Bill Anderson, he's my friend. Where is Bill Anderson? And Billy Graham goes, he's right behind you. And Sheik turns around and looks at me and he starts crying. He goes, oh my God, my good friend, Bill Anderson. I haven't seen you in years. And he's hugging me. And I was crying. I had tears down my face because I saw a side of the Iron Sheik that I had never seen. He was sober. He was clean. And I saw him as a man, not as this drinking guy. I saw him and we hugged. I couldn't let go of him. We were both in tears. And from that point on, I'm in love with the guy. And we've done a couple of events since then and instantly hugging and crying.
So do you talk to him a lot on the telephone and stuff?
I have not talked to him on the phone at all. I've just seen him at events.
Oh, gotcha.
2 years, but I saw him in 2011 and 2013, a few events, some autograph signings in LA. I went with Billy Graham again. And I've heard Sheik is in bad shape right now, though. I've heard his health gone way down.
Yeah, I don't know how to get a hold of him. I knew he had a guy that was helping him with setting up interviews and things like that. But I can't remember the fellow's name. I know
what you're talking about. I can't remember the guy's name either. Maybe Luke would probably have a better connection to the Iron Sheik than anybody. Right. I don't know. I know he was living in Georgia, somewhere right outside of Atlanta or something. That's the last I heard, and I don't have any communication with him whatsoever. I haven't had anything on him.
So, out of that golden era, who do you still keep contact with? Besides Billy Graham?
Oh, I just see guys at the Cauliflower Alley Club through the years, whether it was the Honky Tonk Man or, I mean, Superstar Billy Graham, but Superstar doesn't do interviews anymore.
Yeah, that's what you told me before.
Yeah,
And
he's really.
I would love to talk to that guy, even if it's just talking over the phone.
Yeah, I love Billy, but he's real hard to deal with. And he's going to be 76 years old in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gotten older. He's gone through so much health problems through the years. He just doesn't really care about doing interviews, and he's very picky. He has one friend he'll do interviews for, this guy Hannibal, and that's the only guy. And
I know Hannibal. Well, I know Hannibal by seeing his show. I don't know him.
Yeah, and that's the only guy he'll deal with. Give you an example. I set Billy up on an interview about 6-7 years ago with a guy in New York. Just doing a phone interview, not even a live thing like this. It was just a phone interview. And the guy was a big fan of Billy's because he grew up watching him at the Madison Square Garden in New York. So he talked to Billy about his working with Bruno and working with Ivan Koloff and all the legends of New York during the 60s and 70s or the 70s. And Billy got on the radio interview. He committed to the interview and he did it. He did it while he was in my car. We were sitting there driving and Billy did the phone interview. And all Billy did was talk about how much he hated Triple H and other people. It was like totally went the wrong direction. And I said, Billy, you want to talk about Bruno? He goes, oh, I want to talk about WWF now. And it's like, you can't tell Billy what to do. You can't guide him. He does what he wants to do. And it's a hard interview is what I'm trying to say, if you can get him to commit. And
right. Well, as you know, that's kind of how I allow things to go. Like, I mean, especially with this show, because I like guys to tell their stories,
right.
And they're not with, the promoter or some organization was sticking their finger. Oh no, you can't have, whoever Buff Bagwell say that because that may offend somebody. That may hurt somebody's feelings.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the guys that I stay in touch with nowadays, it's mainly through Facebook. It's like Lanny Popple or Road Warrior Animal. Those kind of guys that have been friends forever and ever and ever, go back so far. I don't reach out to too many of the boys anymore. I'm just so far removed from the business, but I have great memories of the business.
Right.
And I have taken probably 30 or 40,000 photos during my career of my matches, of people taking them of my matches and giving them to me, and pose pictures with the who's who of the business from Bruno on down. And those are what I cherish in my days I worked in the business. But as far as like picking up the phone and calling somebody, I never do that anymore. I'll post a picture on Facebook, and if Animal likes it, he'll message me. We'll talk for a minute or two. Or Lanny will do the same. And I kind of drop it at that. It's just like good friends, old memories, and that's what it's about,
Right.
And, same with like Tugboat, guys like him, they're just old friends that I was on the road with, and they like photos that I post and everything, and so that's the extent of really staying in touch with the guys anymore. About the last 15 years, not too much.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at now. Like, I mean, since I started the show, I had to reach out and start hitting up some of the guys I've worked with because, some of them guys have, moved up in life.
Right.
I mean, and gotten in a place like Ring of Honor, so on and so on. So, I got to hit them up and be like, hey, man, you got to get a hold of, like, this person, that person. Because a lot of times, like, put on Facebook, like, there's a lot of these legends, they have a Facebook page, but you don't know if it's the real person or if it's a fan made it.
Right. Well, and that's the way it is with Billy Graham's too. Billy puts content on his page, but he doesn't run his Facebook page. Another man does. But Billy is there to override anything that's going to go on the page, but he doesn't put it on himself. He sends his guy a picture.
because I messaged that page over and over and over again, like, like I'm a big fan. My grandmother remembers watching, her man Bruno San Martino versus, because like I'm from Maryland, so Bruno was the guy here on the East Coast,
Legend.
Yeah, like
More than
my grandmother talks about him and Haystack Calhoun, and yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Detroit, so my heroes were the Sheik, Bobo Brazil, and the Kangaroos, Tex McKenzie, and Ben Justice and the Stomper, and George Cannon, and Dr. Jerry Graham, and all these guys. They're all my heroes because that's what I used to see in Detroit in the early '70s.
Right.
And so when I got to go to Japan, when I got to go to Japan in '91 and wrestle, oh my God, I was a kid in a candy store. There I am, my biggest hero. I'm the biggest villain of all time. I'm in the ring with him.
Right.
To me, it didn't get any better than that. So those are the great memories that I take away from the business. Getting to travel with that.
Yeah, I mean that like me, I got the pleasure. Like a lot of those guys, I never got, like a lot of my heroes, I never got, or the guys I grew up on, or whatever, however you want to put it. I didn't get to wrestle a lot of them, but a lot of them guys I got to meet, because they would come and do autograph signings or whatever. Like Jake the Snake, Brett, of course. Yeah, just different guys. Masked Superstar, aka Acts of Demolition.
Yeah.
As a kid in the '80s, I loved Demolition. Smash was my favorite, but I loved Demolition.
Yeah, I wrestled their guys many times. Bill, Barry, and fantastic guys. Billy also, it's probably been 10 years since I've talked to him on the phone, but what a wonderful man he is. Good family man, good person. Hell of a wrestler, very adaptable. He worked under so many names through the years, being a Russian at one time, being the Repo Man. He did it all.
I'll be honest with you, Bill. He is like one of my ultimate goals. Like since I've started this show, like my ultimate goal is to interview Demolition Smash, or Repo Man, however, whatever gimmick you want to put him under. To me, he'll always be Smash. And
I'll see if I have any contact information, and I'll reach out in any way I can to help.
Well, okay.
It's a long time since I've talked to Barry, but he's a great guy.
After this interview, I'll send you my number and stuff. And
okay. Yeah, and I'll think of some others. I don't know. I'll have to think about. I usually just don't think about the guys too much anymore. I'm 63 years old, so I'm at such a tail end of my life. Hopefully I've got 20 more years. Who knows? I'd have a day. I'd have 30. I don't know, but I kind of just more in self-survival mode than I am reaching out to the boys.
I completely understand what you're talking about there, because I don't remember if I told you or not. Because my memory is shot to hell, because I suffered 14 concussions. That's why I had to retire from wrestling. I tried too hard to be the Dynamite Kid.
Yeah.
And I'm suffering for it at 39 years old. I'll be 40 in December.
Right.
Like I've had a stroke. I've had a heart attack. The concussions. Some days.
It's a brutal business.
Yeah, like a lot of times I have to sit there like there's been times where me and you were supposed to do this interview and I completely forgot until you messaged me like, hey, we still on? And I'm like, oh, I don't forgot everything.
I understand. And
when this first started happening, the memory.
That's why I'm glad we were able to hook up today, and do this.
Like I said, the first time I started having these memory issues, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. Like I thought I was completely losing it. Like, you know what I mean? Right.
And, it's I saw that with Red Bastien the last couple of years of his life. He had the Alzheimer's. And once you're once your brain goes, that's all you got, man. And when the day comes and you don't recognize your friends and things like that, that's the most horrible thing on earth, and your family, and everything else. And the last time I saw Red was in 2009. He passed away. I think it was a year and a half later. And so I'm in Vegas, and I was honestly terrified, and I didn't do it. I was afraid to ask Fred when we hugged each other if he knew me, because I heard his Alzheimer's was already so bad. I didn't want to hear his answer. He gave me a hug, looked at me, we made eye contact, we hugged, and stayed in that embrace for about a minute. And I was afraid to say, Red, do you know me? Do you really know me? Because I didn't want to know his answer. I'm just going to take it for granted that, man, this is my buddy Bill, and just leave it at that. And I'll always think of it like that. My final time with him, man. And then he passed away. And I did visit his grave in Texas. He's buried in Dallas, in a crypt on the wall. I went to Red Baptist crypt 5 years ago, and it was quite an emotional day for me. He's buried right down the hallway from Mickey Mantle, one of the greatest ball players of all time. You know, doesn't get much better than Mickey Mantle.
Nah, not really. I mean, any better you get is Babe Ruth, and I mean,
yeah. And he's buried in New York City, and I want to go to Babe's grave one day, but I at least made it to Mickey Mantle's, and what an honor it was to stand in his grave. I was in tears standing at Mickey Mantle's crypt before I got to Red Bastides, which just brought it all out of me. What an emotional day, because Red was like my older brother or my father to me. He was a really good man. I can't say enough good things about Texas Red. But I wanted to mention too, Axel. Along the way, I was able to write some books on my wrestling career. I'm not an autobiography yet by any means. I wrote a book here, and it's called "Big Bill Anderson Remembers His Fallen Friend Wrestling." And superstar Billy Graham did the foreword for this book. And in this book is the story of Road Warrior Hawk and our friend Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. I did a story on them. And the Cruiser and the Big Boss Man and Andre the Giant, Red Bastien and the Sheik and Freddie Blassie and Jack Briscoe, Bruiser Brody and Professor Toro Tanaka and Fabulous Moolah. And I did a nice book, and some pictures, my personal pictures are in this book that I've taken of these people, my friends. And if anybody wants the book, it's available at bigbillanderson.us. That's my website just for my books. It's bigbillanderson.us. And it's $20, which includes shipping prices. It's total, and it includes an autograph from me and star Billy Graham. Billy Graham's autograph alone is a $35 investment, and he does it for free for me. And that's because he did my foreword for this book. And I have some great photos in here of Billy with my son when he was only a few years old here. And so, it's a real cool thing I did. And I have a couple other books on there that I did, but nothing of my autobiography. I haven't written that yet. I haven't found the time and the energy it takes to do that. But I've written about friends of mine that have passed away, because my brothers in this brotherhood means everything to me, and I could do 10 volumes of this book. I put on here, this is volume 1, and I haven't updated it and done more, but I could easily write about Davey Boy Smith and Ravishing Rick Rude and Kurt Hennig, and on it goes. So many of my friends, Hercules Hernandez, one of the great guys, loved Herc. So many of the boys are gone from the 80s,
right,
and the 90s that I knew, and so I pay my respect where I can, and I always try to keep things upbeat and take the high road, the higher approach, You know, Adrian Adonis busted my mouth open once, 27 stitches in my mouth. And I still went to his grave in Bakersfield and did a video for my YouTube channel, which is Big Bill Anderson's Life Tours. And I did a video on Adrian Adonis, and I said nothing really negative about him in the whole interview. You know, I kept it as upbeat as possible, even though at one time he'd had some drug and alcohol issues. He cleaned himself up before he passed away in a car accident in Canada. So,
yeah,
you know, I try to take the high road and keep things upbeat with my friends in wrestling because I respect them all.
right. Not to knock our own country, but Canada definitely has put out some of the best wrestling talent.
Oh yeah, you got the Rougeaus in Montreal and Rick Martel and those kind of guys. And I wrestled the Rougeaus too, Jock and Raymond. Great talents. And
Dino,
you got a lot of great talent. And you got the Calgary talent, you got Vancouver talent, you got Toronto and Montreal. A lot of Tiger Jeet Singh coming out of Toronto area, and a lot of great talent in Canada. Lots of good talent.
Yeah,
that's what I like. You know about Calgary. You had so much great people there.
Oh, Calgary. Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Stampede Wrestling. Holy, oh my God.
Yeah, I watched a lot of tapes of Calgary, and man, you watch all the Hearts when they were just beginning and working with Dynamite and Davey Boy and Gama Singh and oh my gosh, so many of these guys. David Schultz when he was up there, or Dr. D, and you know, a lot of fantastic guys work in that area.
You know, WWE is always putting out these crazy DVDs, you know, for like down there in Texas with WCCW and, you know, the Mid-South. I'm waiting for them to give us a Calgary, you know, the Stampede Wrestling DVD set. Like,
I don't know why they're not. They bought out Stu Hart, you know, I mean, they should, I'm sure they have a library of his work there.
I know that like on Benoit's DVD, or no, did they put, I think they put maybe one match on the Benoit DVD, and then like Pillman's DVD, there's some stuff. Owen's DVD, there's some stuff. The ones that they put out for Brett, there's some stuff from Stampede. But like, you know, I want to see like, you know, like other matches, like, you know, Bruce Hart versus somebody, or, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You can view that stuff on YouTube, but, you know, nobody wants to sit there and watch it on their phone when they got a big flat screen TV or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. I've watched. I haven't watched it in a. You kind of sparked me to want to go back and watch some Calgary stuff now. I can find on YouTube because I remember watching a lot of matches and just enjoying the hell out of it. Some involving Stu in like a 6-man tag and that kind of thing. And he was way past his prime. He was a lot older, but he'd still get in there, and you have to respect that Stu.
Right. I mean, you watch a little Young Dynamite. I mean, it was crazy how tiny he was. And you hear
he's skinny and everything. Yeah, exactly.
I heard a story from Jake the Snake Roberts when I was in West Virginia. We did a show together, and I was wearing this shirt, a Dynamite Kid shirt. I don't remember where I got the shirt from, but he came up to me. He says, "Man," he said, "I got to tell you this." You know, Jake talks. He's like, "I got to tell you this story, man. You like Dynamite Kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, can't you tell? I love Dynamite." He said, "Oh, I got to tell you this story." He's telling me the story about him and Brett, Dynamite Brett. And he said, Brett would sometimes accidentally potato Dynamite.
Oh,
so I would come back and talk to Jake. He'd be like, "Jake, he potatoed me again." You know, he'd bust Dynamite in the eye or something. He said, "So tonight, I'm going to go out there. Which I should have hit him in, Jake." And Jake would sit there and he goes, "Well, I don't fucking know, you know." Like, he didn't know what to say, you know, because it was like kind of shocking to him. He says, "Okay, so I'll blacken both of them." Or he hurt the arm or something. He said, "Okay, well, I'll break both of them." And he'd just go, and Jake would be like, no, right eye. and he'd make sure that Jake was watching through the gorilla position down the ramp, into the ring, because if he wasn't, Dynamite was going to blacken both of Brett's eyes or whatever the case was.
Oh my God. Well, that's a hell of a talent, is Jake Roberts. When he was in his younger days, man, was he red hot. When he was working like for Bill Watts and in Dallas in the 80s, in the early 80s, man, he was a hell of a talent. I wrestled Jake, like I told you earlier, many, many times. Absolutely have great experiences wrestling Jake, but that's a man that was a great interviewer. He could cut a promo like very few, like he was of Dusty Rhodes caliber. And because he could put asses in seats, as they say.
Oh, man, Dusty Rhodes, I'll tell you what. I got a buddy of mine. He can emulate Dusty so well. Like the
Dusty was a great one, man.
Oh my God!
There's your classic example of a guy with no body that had more talent than 50 guys combined. Dusty Rhodes was so good at what he needed to do in the ring to excite the fans. And I love being around Dusty. Tremendous personality. He had confidence, and he went out there, and he didn't care if he had a big belly or not. He would make everybody look great in the ring and sell out the arenas. He had that ability, and it's a wonderful.
How about Brutus Beefcake? How was Brutus?
I was around Brutus a lot. I never was in the ring with Brutus. I have no bad things to say or necessarily great things either. I was just around him, and he treated me good. When I was around him, I know some of my guys from my wrestling school wrestled him and lost their hair on TV. And he would clip their hair with those big clippers and all that crap. And they said they had no problem with Brutus. He was fine with them. And
you never hear anybody say anything bad about him besides, like, he didn't get the push or he was just a mid-card guy. I don't know, man, but like I remember the 80s pretty well, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I think WWF dropped the ball on him.
Yeah, I think he was just in a bad place because there was so much talent that I think he got lost like mid card to upper mid card, and they just felt they could only put so many guys against Hogan or whatever, and I
think the baby face. I mean, I remember sometimes. Like, I remember different pay-per-views where, like, they talk about the pop. You hear the pop of the crowd. And I can remember pay-per-views, like, his entrance, that music would hit, and that crowd would be so loud for him.
Oh, yeah.
And later that night, you see Hogan wrestling, whoever the case was. And, there was with that pop that it matched Brutus's. And I'm like, did Vince hear this?
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. When you think back on the 80s, you think about their entrances. And the Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan. I used to get goosebumps. I'm standing in the ring doing the ring announcing, and I had to introduce Hulk, and I had goosebumps on my arms because of the electricity in the arena. It was unbelievable. And the same with Owen Hart as the Blue Blazer. The same with Jannetty and Michaels as the Rockers. All those guys. Jim Duggan with a 2x4. They had personality. You had Brutus the Barber coming down with clippers, that was cool stuff, Kamala coming out with Kim Chi or whoever, King Kong Bundy walking down with Bobby Heenan or something. Everybody personality that was bigger than life, all those guys. And I loved it. Ravishing Rick Rude. Oh my God, how he got over.
Yeah, them women loved him.
Oh yeah, and his tights and his abs, man. The guy had that 6-pack abs and everything, and he was a great guy. I love Rick, and he's another talent gone way too soon.
Yep.
Like they all are, like Kurt and all of them guys. Lost a lot of friends. Big Boss Man, man, what a hell of a nice guy he was.
Me and my best friend, we grew up, wrestling was everything for us. And this is where it's going to sound odd probably to you, okay? Like, here in Maryland, we had two different kinds of wrestling we could watch. We had the Crockett's, at the NWA, or WWF. And I would, me and him, we were like so in love with pro wrestling that we watched both programs. And we used to fantasize like he would say, I'd say, when I grow up, man, I'm going to be the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And he'd be like, yeah, and I'll be the WWF champion and we'll run the wrestling world. And I remember we were just talking about it the other night, and I was like, man, I said, here we are. I said, you're 40. I said, I'm 39. And I said, I ain't won the NWA title yet, and you ain't won the WWE title, man. We're slacking. We need to get off our asses.
Yeah. But, I can tell you, and only from my point of view, a lot of people would probably disagree, but I was a guy, I was just a journeyman wrestler. I spent 35 years in the business, and I traveled to many countries around the world, and I achieved everything I set out to do as a teenager when I was 15. And I said, I want to be a pro wrestler. When I was 17, I had my first match here in Phoenix. It's like I told Billy Graham, this is a story. I headlined shows here in Phoenix at the Madison Square Garden Arena. It was an old arena built in 1932. It's torn down now here in Phoenix. Very historic building, gone. And I'd have lunch with Billy Graham, and he'd say, I main evented New York's Madison Square Garden. You main evented here, but we both achieved our goals. And it's true. To me, this was my Mecca. This was like New York to me, here in Phoenix. I had smaller goals and achieved them all. At the auditorium in Los Angeles, where I used to live in LA and watch John Tolis and Freddie Blassie in the 70s. I got to work in that same building and got to work in movies even in that same building. And so I achieved what I wanted, even though to other people they'd say like, oh, you never won a champion for WWE or NWA. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I was in the ring. I did everything I wanted to do and more. Far more than I ever dreamed of doing. Because of my wrestling, I got to go to Egypt and ride a camel around the pyramids, Giza. Right. I got to go to Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Turkey, all because of wrestling. I didn't pay for my ticket. And it's like Lanny Poffo. I heard him on an interview a while back. He said, it's on somebody else's dime, I got to go travel the world. And I didn't pay for none of it. Nothing. And that's it. So that's success in its own way. It wasn't a matter of being world champion. It's a matter of just enjoying what you got accomplished in the business. And I got to wrestle my heroes, like I told you, John Tolis, the Sheik. Oh my God, that meant everything to me from being a kid, from being a teenager, getting to meet these guys and then wrestle them. The Sheik in Japan. Oh my God, that it didn't get any better or bigger for me. I was on top of the world.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how I felt like once I got into the wrestling business, because like every little goal that I had planned as a kid was happening. First I got to meet the legendary, Ricky Morton, who, pushed me over to this guy named the Maestro from WCW, who was like, me and him started talking, and he was like, look, if you want to get into business, don't bullshit around, do it. You're not going to get any younger. So I did, and then next thing you know, here I'm in the ring. I'm working, I'm training. Then I started doing shows. Next thing I know, I'm running all over the place, meeting all these guys I grew up watching on TV. And then, I made that comment earlier about wanting to win the NWA World title. And yeah, it probably would have been a great honor to do so, even now with the NWA being back. But I felt like I won it the day I met Harley Race at NWA Legends Fest. Because I told Harley that, the boyhood dream that I had. I said, I just wanted to hold the world title and say, it's mine, blah, blah, blah. And Harley took his copy of the NWA title, handed it to me, and says, have your moment.
That's cool.
And I'm not going to lie to you, it may sound soft as cotton, but that was a tearful moment for me, because here's the greatest NWA world champion.
Oh, no.
It handed me the NWA title, telling me have my moment.
And Harley was tough as nails. I wrestled him one time in WWF when he was the King, Harley Race. He was
Right.
way at the end of his career. In Vegas, I wrestled him at TV tapings, and I was just honored to even be in the ring with Harley Race. And it was about a 2-minute match, and I don't even know what he beat me with. Didn't matter. I think he beat me with a knee drop or something on my head.
Right.
But I was honored in the ring with the man. And yeah, he was one of the greatest NWA champions in history. Him, Jack Briscoe, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., you know, Dusty, Ric Flair, those guys, they're the top, man. Harley
Yeah.
was
When I met him, he asked me. He said, "Who was your hero, kid, growing up? Was it Dusty?" And I told him. I said, "No, sir." I said, "It was not Dusty Rhodes." I said, "My all-time favorite wrestler is the Dynamite Kid." He said, "Man, Dynamite." He said that guy could go. He said, I try to tell Jimmy Crockett and him to bring his ass in. That kid could go." He said, "I think if Jimmy would have brought him in, he could have put him against anybody."
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah, and we just lost Harley Race just not too long ago, and very
Yeah.
sad. We lost Dusty. We lost all these legends, you know, and
Dynamite on his birthday. I cried. I'm not gonna lie. I cried like a newborn woman.
no, I understand perfectly. Very sad. And he was in very poor health, and I know.
There's Dynamite, you know what I mean? Like, he's my co-host on the show. I always tell people that when I'm doing the videos. Sometimes I'm like, "And I got my co-host."
Very good. Very good. That's funny. That's great.
Yeah. I'm always looking for stuff with Dynamite because that's the only thing I have. Like, yeah, it's hard to find pictures of them that's not on the internet, like, photos or, 8x10s or whatever. It's hard to find anything like that because I guess they didn't make much of it.
Yeah, and he was at the beginning of the. I mean, he was at WrestleMania 1, wasn't he? Or WrestleMania 2, 3. Yeah, he was in that period of time where they were just beginning their real pushes,
Right.
publicity stuff and expansion with shirts and everything. And
Yeah, because I mean, we got the British Bulldog T-shirts. The British Bulldogs, the T-shirts that said that, but we never got like one where it had a Dynamite Kid shirt or the Dynamite Kid poster. But I know over in Japan you could buy that stuff like it was hotcakes. But then you try to go and look at stuff online from Japan. Like, I can't speak Japanese and I damn sure can't read it.
Exactly. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, Dynamite was a great one. A great talent in the ring,
Well, Bill, I have to wrap this one up tonight, buddy, because we're already over our hour. But it was great talking to you, and I would love to have you back on the show again, my friend.
We will do it anytime you want, Axel. You got it. And I'll reach out. I'll see if I can reach out to anybody I know. I have to put my brain together here and start thinking and see who I can think of. Maybe some other guys, some friends of mine, some name talent and that sort of thing, and see if I can get some people for you.
All righty. I greatly appreciate it, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you, Axel. Have a great evening, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.